All right, so let's talk about bouncing tracks. And really what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about bouncing tracks is turning the tracks into audio. Now, if you already have audio in your tracks, it's not just about turning tracks into audio from like instrument tracks or something like that. It's also about baking in the effects that you have. So for example, if I have some crazy amounts of effects on some of these tracks, then they might be taking a lot of my processor power. And what I can do is I can turn these tracks into audio tracks with the effect in the track. So for example, if I go over here to my drum, I've got my my drum one here, and let's say I put on here a compressor that takes a lot of CPU power. So I'll just use the let's use the Fairchild 670 here. And if we open up my UAD meter, we can see this one takes up a fair amount of processor here. And let's also put on the a channel strip from SSL. This will also take up a fair amount of processor power, so there you can see it, everything just jumped up a lot. So I'll just go in here and we'll just put on all right, so we'll just have this here. And okay, so just something like this. Now let's say we like that sound and we want to make sure that sound stays like that, but we want to be able to free up some of our processor power over here. So what I can do is I'll go in here and we can just turn this whole thing into another audio track. So what I'll do is I can right click on the track itself. Here, let me just zoom in here so you can see easily. I'll right click on the track name. And we have three options here. We have freeze, commit, and bounce. And they all do kind of similar stuff. It's different, but it's similar-ish. So the main one that I would use is commit. This is my favorite one of the three of these. Well, depending on the kind of the result we're trying to get. But for this kind of thing where I'm baking in where I'm like committing the effects, I'm going to use commit here. It's going to ask me, what do I want to commit? I want to commit the selected tracks, which in this case is just one track. And do I want to consolidate the clips together? Probably not. Probably leave that unchecked. Do I want to render any automation? So if I have volume and mute automation, do I want to put that into the audio? And the answer is probably no. Usually I want to keep that on the track itself so I can keep my automation. I can still mess with my automation later on if I want to make changes. Same thing with pan. What do I want to copy over from my original track and I want to bring into my new track that I'm going to create? I want to copy my sends and my group assignments. That's like your outputs and stuff like that. So these two boxes, you want to check these boxes. And then where do I want to put it? Let's insert it after the last selected track. So in this case, it's only got the one track selected, so it's just going to put it right here next to it. Now, this last one here is the source track. What's going to happen with my original track? Well, I don't usually want to delete it. I want to keep it around so I could make changes later. And this is pretty cool because if I delete it, it's just going to get rid of the track. It's going to get rid of my effects, all that stuff, and so I can't go back. But if I hide and make inactive, what that's going to do is it's going to deactivate the track and all of its plugins so that I can reactivate them later if I want to. So let's say I realize later on, oh, it's a little bit too much compression on the track. So what I can do is I can reactivate the track and I can change the compression and then bounce it again, commit it again. If I just want to make it inactive, I can do that. It's not going to hide it. It's just going to make it inactive. And I can do nothing, which is going to keep the track there. And this is good for duplicating stuff. If I want to bounce it down with one set of effects on it or something, I can do nothing, and it'll just make a copy of that in audio, and then I could go and change my effects. And I'm going to show you that right here. So right now I'm going to go ahead and go make inactive, hide and make inactive. And we're going to do it offline, so I'm going to hit OK. And now it's going to bounce it down. And you can see it's actually bouncing down quite slow. The reason why it's bouncing it down so slowly is because I'm using the UAD effects here. Actually, let's go ahead and pause that. I forgot that it's going to do it so slowly. Let's just use some other effects here for a second, not the UAD effects. Those are also very powerful UAD effects, so it's gonna take up a lot of my processor there. So let's use, instead of that one, let's use a different compressor. Let's use the solid bus compressor here. This is also an SSL bus compressor, but it's from Native Instruments. And then let's use the channel strip from Avid. Right here, there we go. All right. So we have this one and this one, and I'm not gonna bother to really listen to this stuff. I'm just gonna put a preset on here, soft brighter drums. All right, so we got this, and now let's bounce it down and see what happens there. Let's use commit, right click on the name of the track, select commit, make sure everything's okay, and just this will all stay the same every time you do it. So just basically you just hit OK, and there we go, much faster. There we go. All right, so now we can see the drums are a bit louder here. You can see they're more like just loudness. And what we can see here is that the other track we just had is still here in my tracks list here on the left, and I can show it, but everything is grayed out. So if I look at this view here, everything is grayed out, and that means that the track is deactivated. So it's not going to put any taxing on our processor. It's still there, and we can still get back to it, but it's not going to use up any of our processor power. We're not going to hear it. These effects are not in the signal chain anymore. So all this stuff there, if we want to reactivate it, we can just go to the name of the track in either screen. It doesn't matter if you're in your mix window or your edit window. Right click and go to make active, and it will reactivate everything. So now it's back in our signal flow. We can hear it, and I can do this. I can also turn it off by right clicking and select hide and make inactive, and it puts it back to being gray, and it actually you can't see it any longer either. Okay, so we can see it here. We can unhide it and hide it by clicking on the gray dot up here in the left hand corner of our screen. So that's our drum one there, and now we have the new track, but as you can see, it's just louder. So you're seeing the effects in the waveform of the track. That's what's going on here. You're seeing the effects in the waveform of the track. So that's basically commit. When I do it, you can see it says .cm, which means it's committed. The track is committed, and it's got the audio and everything, all the effects built in there. So that's one way you can do that. But let's just check out something else here. So let's go back over here to our instrument one that I made earlier, and I'm going to put some strings in here. Let's go ahead and let's put in, oh, I don't have my, hold on, turn on my hard drive so we can see everything. I'm going to plug in both my hard drives here. There we go. Plug that one in, turn that one on. Cool, gang. All right. Just make sure everything's in there. Yep, good. And let me reinsert this so we can find everything. No insert. Let's put contact. Actually, let's not use contact. Let's use the Farfisa. No, the commit does not make the track louder. That's because that's from my plugins. The plugins that were on the track made the track louder, not the commit. Commit, if you just commit nothing, then it's just going to give you the same track again. So, oh, why am I hearing you so loud? Yep. So, yeah, that's not the takeaway there, Eduardo. It's not that the commit made it louder. It got louder because of the effects on the track itself. Commit's just going to change whatever you've got on the track into audio, and that just happened to make it louder. All right, so here's my organ sound, farfasa, and let's go ahead and change this organ up. All right, so we got that sound there, and let's go ahead and put some effects on it, just to give it a little special something something here. And I want to show you something now with this. So we got here modulation. Let's put on the tau chorus. I like this tau chorus. Awesome. Turn it down a little bit there. Okay, and let's put on another, let's see, let's move this down here and just slightly dirty it up a little bit. So let's put on some, well, not dirty up, let's warm it up here with a tape plugin. And which one do I want to use? Let's see. Isotope, maybe not. Slate, oh yeah, let's use Slate Digital here. Use one of the tape machines in here. And there we go. Cool. All right, so I got that. That's sweet. Okay, so we got this nice sound going on here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to play some stuff into the beginning of the song. Go to our top. So let me just play something like that in. No tracks are record enabled. Let's make that record enabled right there. Boop. Okay. Cool, so I got the beginning part here. Let's grab these first notes and fix these. Get rid of these. Pull this one over. And just move this around. Whoops. Okay. I want to make this nice and big so I can see what's going on. And okay, and put this where the top is, and I can see these clips here. I can see it in here. Hold on, let me just get rid of that here. Let's change this to notes, and I can see my notes inside of here and just see where does everything start. Everything starts like right there. So yeah, cool. Let's put it back here. Yeah, you can hear it's starting a little bit early. So move it over just a little bit. Boom. Back it over. Okay, so now let's say we like this organ sound. I hate you. Hold on, that thing. Hold on 1 second. Let's just get that back down to where it needs to be. All right, so we have this. It sounds pretty good in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to bounce, we're going to commit this. I'm going to show you two different ways to commit this, okay? So one way is we're going to commit just everything, and that's the way we just did it. It's like the same exact way we just did it. I right-click on the track name, and I go to commit right here. Boom. Now, I just hit OK because everything is correct in here, so I hit that, and now it's going to render the organ sound out. It hides the original organ track, but I still have it here, so I can still go back and mess with my MIDI if I want to at a later date. So there we go. So now what we're listening to okay, everything's coming from this audio track down here. And you can see it's just going to go for the while in the song. I'm just going to delete the end part out. And whoops, over here. Same thing, get rid of the beginning part there. All right, so I have this audio track here. So that's one way I can do that. I'm going to go ahead and deactivate this track. We don't need this track to be here right now. And let's go ahead and actually let's give it a name. Organ.cm01. Okay, so this track now is not playing. If I hit play right now, we're not going to hear any organ. Okay, I'm going to also, just real quick, I'm going to go ahead and quantize this stuff here. So oh, actually, you know what? If I quantize it, it's not going to do any good. I can't quantize it because I'm not in the right time. So, all right. So this organ track here, I'm going to reactivate this. Let's make it active so we can see it again. And let's see my inserts here. There we go. Now, let's say that I like the organ part, but I want to maybe keep my effects open so I can mess with my effects later. I'm just going to switch the order of these here. Well, actually, here, I'll do that. I'll just leave it like that. So what I can do is I can actually commit to a certain plugin, so I can leave all the other plugins on the track. What does this mean? It means that if I want to I just want to bounce my organ only, but I want to keep these effects here so I can tweak them and mess with them later on. I'm not sure if the effects are my final effects, but I like the organ part and I want to make sure it's not using up any of my processor power. Well, what I can do is I right-click on the first one here. I right-click on it, and now it says commit up to this insert or freeze up to this insert. So let's just use commit here, and I'm going to show you the difference between freeze and commit. So I'm going to use commit, and it's going to give me the same options here. I'm going to commit the track, and it's just going to say all the same stuff is all the same. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to hit OK, and it commits it. But check this out. Now it still has my plugins on here like it does in the original. If I pull up the original, it has all my plugins here, but the difference is this one has the organ in it. This one down here does not have the organ in it, which is pretty cool because that means that now I could go down here and I can say, you know what, I don't like the order of these. I want to move the tape plugin to the end here, and I can change the sound. That's a very subtle change, but it's still a change, and that's the order of things matters. And we're going to talk about that more tomorrow, how much the order of things matters. So we're going to come back and we're going to talk about that more tomorrow. But just for now, I just want you to know that you can change the order of things afterwards if you commit just the instrument plugin. So oftentimes what I will do when I'm working with MIDI and Pro Tools is I'll just commit the instrument plugin. So I'm just baking in the MIDI part. It's just going to bake it into the track. So now we've got audio of that MIDI part, and I'm going to leave my effects open so I can go back and change them later. So that's a really cool little feature right there. And if we check the difference on these, here, let's just look at this. I'm going to make both of these large here. So this one down here, I'm going to reactivate this. This one has all the effects in the audio, so you can see it's a louder audio signal because it has the effects in the audio. This one here is just the organ, so it doesn't have any of the effects, the chorus or the tape, so it's not louder. It's just the same as what our original was, but it's still, if we were to bounce it down with these effects in it now, it would look like this, but as it is, it looks like a different waveform because it doesn't have the effects in it. And that's a big deal. That's something to really remember, is that your effects are going to change the loudness of the song or the loudness of the audio, or they're going to change what your audio waveform looks like because they're actually changing the audio itself. Okay, so that's commit. Now let's talk about freeze here for a bit. I'm going to open up this MIDI thing here. And freeze is something that we use with MIDI stuff quite a bit. Right click, make active. Boom. I'm going to go ahead and keep these in here so we can just see the differences here. I'm going to call this one organ.cm02. Now, I can, to freeze a track, it's very similar to commit, but there's a big difference. I just right click on the track name, I hit freeze. And now it doesn't give me any options here. It doesn't say, how do you want to freeze this? It's just going to freeze it. But look what happens. Now, it went ahead and it froze the track. And it froze the track, but it still keeps everything there. But I can't edit this anymore. I can't click it. I can't move it around. It's locked in place, and you can see it's like kind of like lines over it like that. Eduardo says, is there a way to compact the track without messing with the audio? So first of all, Eduardo, real quick, it's not compact, it's commit. That's important because there's another function in Pro Tools which is called compact. So don't confuse those, it's commit the track. And secondly, it's not messing with the audio. We're still hearing the same audio. It's just showing us the audio. So changing the waveform here is not a bad thing. It's just one has the effect in it, one does not have the effect in it. So one, I can go back and I can change the effect later, and the other one, I can't change the effect because it's in the track. So it's not messing with the audio. I don't want you to think that it's messing with the audio. It's really just either the effects are in the audio or they're not in the audio. And the way you hear it is the same both ways. So if here, let me just solo this organ here. Let me just put this back like where it was. So these two here are actually the exact same sound. So let's just listen to this one first. That one, now this one here should sound the same. Sounds the same. But if I take these off, this one, now they're going to sound different because now we're no longer hearing with the chorus and the tape on it. So let's listen to this one that we bounced down first here. Right, and now let's listen to the other one that's just the organ without the chorus and without the tape on it. Hear how different that sounds? There's no stereo spread in this one here. There's no stereo because that stereo was coming from my chorus here, and the loudness was coming from the tape. Now, just remember, in terms of loudness, it depends on what plugins you have, and this is really important that you understand this. If I have a compressor on there, a compressor is affecting the dynamics of the track. So if I have a compressor on there, it's going to change the loudness. Different effects will affect the loudness differently. So dynamic effects like compressors, gates, things like that, they affect the loudness. any kind of distortion effects, harmonic effects like fuzz pedals, distortion pedals, things like that are going to affect the loudness. And you're going to learn about this stuff as you start to dig into the different plugins and stuff like that, which is, we're going to talk about those more. Actually, we're going to talk about stuff more like that tomorrow. So let's hold off on that and come back and kind of dig deeper into this tomorrow when we're talking about effect chains and how this affects the loudness, okay? But yeah, I mean, it's not the same in terms of loudness, but how it's different is based on what plugins you use. So I can't just say to you, yes, it affects the loudness, or no, it doesn't affect the loudness, because it's really case by case depending on what plugins you're using. Okay, so I hope that answers the question. If you have more questions about it, if you're still a little bit like wondering about it, we could talk about it in Zoom. Also, tomorrow we're going to be talking about plugins in more detail. So we'll be talking about it a little bit more tomorrow as well. Okay, so that's these two here. I'm just going to go ahead and mute these two tracks. Let's go ahead and unflatten this. So to unfreeze it. To unfreeze, I just do the same thing. I right-click and I go here to unfreeze. Now, here's the cool thing about freezing is that freezing is like if you don't want to like have audio, like if you're not ready to turn it into audio yet, then you can freeze it and you can always unfreeze it later. It's just a real quick thing. What freezing does for us is it allows us to use less CPU power. So if I've got everything on there and I'm pretty sure I like it, but I'm not 100% sure, maybe I want to change the MIDI later on or whatever, then I can unfreeze the track and just go back and change everything, including the MIDI. But I'm still going to hear it with the effects and everything. The bad part about using freeze is that you can't edit it, you can't do anything with it. So actually, between the two, between freeze and commit, I actually prefer to use commit, but I just keep the original track in there so I can always go back and reactivate it later. They're basically the same. It's just one gives me access to all my audio files. So I could take this now and I could flip it. I can fade it. I can fade it out. I can do all this editing to it. I could cut it right here and I can move it around. And I can't do this if the track is frozen. So if I freeze the track, I can't do any editing at all. And if I flatten it, if I freeze the track, I can't do any editing. But if I commit the track, I can go back and edit it. Yet I can still have my original track in there too. So personally, I prefer to use commit, and I don't really use freeze so much. All right, but if you do want to use freeze, let me just show you another way to freeze the track. I can freeze up to an insert, the same thing as my commit. So what I can do is I can freeze just my MIDI. I hit freeze on here. And now my audio is here, but it's still running through my plugins here. The difference with this is a couple things. One, I can still see my MIDI in here, which is kind of cool, but I can't edit it. I can't do anything with it. And I can't move anything around, but I still have access to my plugins here. So personally, again, I would probably use commit, but that's just the way I work. There's nothing wrong with using whichever one you're more comfortable with. If you like to use the freeze, if you like it and you're like, that's the way I want to go, then please be my guest, do that. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you want to keep things open for editing and moving things around and like if I wanted to use the same organ line for somewhere else in the song, then I could do that with my commit, but I can't do it with freeze. So just know that those are the limits. One thing about this is that all the DAWs have this capability, Logic, Pro Tools, and Ableton Live, maybe FL Studio as well, I'm not sure. But they all have the ability to freeze or to commit. They call it different things. So for example, they all have a function called freeze, which works the same way in all tracks. Although with Ableton Live, you can still edit the track even when you freeze it because it's freezing the clips and not the whole track. So Logic and Pro Tools, if you freeze, you cannot edit anything on the track. If with Logic and Pro Tools and Ableton Live, if you commit it, it changes it into audio. The way it works in Ableton Live, it's called flatten. So you freeze it first and then you flatten it. In Logic, it's called bounce in place. So if you right-click on a clip and you select bounce in place, it'll turn it into audio with the plugins and stuff on it. And then Pro Tools, you right-click on the name of the track and you select commit. And there you go. So they call it different things, but it's all the same stuff. So that's those two options here between commit and freeze, and it's in the notes right here, freeze, freezes the track without actually turning it into audio. You can unfreeze at any time to edit the data. It's good for instrument tracks. Commit converts the track to full audio right in the session. It also gives you the option of keeping the original track, which you should do. You can also commit up to a certain plugin in the effects chain. Okay, and that's right here. If you right click on the selected tracker plugin on the next page, it says commit. Use these settings right over here that I have. Use commit to freeze up resources on your CPU. Commit instruments without their effects, so you can just have the instrument audio, and what you do is you right click on the instrument plugin, and then the instrument will be changed to audio, but everything after that will remain as plugins. So that's what I recommend using there. Let's go back and talk about bounce. Now bounce bounces the track to disk for sending to other DAWs, and it's very similar to this one here where we bounce the whole thing down. But if we want to stem out the track, so we want to make stems for somebody else to mix or somebody else to use in another DAW, we use bounce. And the way we do this is, let's go into, I'm going to go ahead and turn this one. I'm going to unfreeze the track so it turns it back into MIDI, and I'm going to hide and make these inactive. There we go, so they're not a thing. So we're just using the MIDI here. I'm going to make everything in here small so we can see everything. Let's listen to everything here. I'm going to go back to top, make sure we're listening to it. All right, I'm gonna, hold on, I just want to edit this first hit here. They're a little bit sloppy here because I was playing it as audio, if y'all remember the other day when I did that, but I can go ahead and edit this to put it so it hits on the beginning. I'm gonna move it right there. There we go. Let's listen. Oh my goodness, organ sound, you're killing me. It's my data from my thing. Sorry, y'all. Yeah, it's moving in there, but it's not moving on the track here. Hold on, let me just see if I can close that down and stop that from doing that. I thought I had done that, but let's see. Oh yeah, here. There we go. Volume. Cool. That should not be a problem anymore. It's just the data knob on the data fader on my keyboard over there is broken, and it's super annoying. Okay, so in here we have, let's see, all these tracks. So I fixed this, so that sounds better. Good, okay. So what I'm gonna do is let's change these into audio to send out to another DAW. So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on all my drums. Let's say I want all my drums to go to Ableton Live or something. So what I do is I highlight all the drums, all the tracks that I want to change into audio. I highlight them all like this, all my drums, and I just hold down Shift and I click them so they're all highlighted there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on all of them and go to bounce. See that? Bounce. Now it's going to give me options, and these options look exactly like the options that we had when we bounced the whole song. They're slightly different, but they look pretty much the same. Okay, render automation, volume, and pan here, and then file type, WAV file, add MP3, interleave 24-bit, 44.1. Just set these to whatever you want your next session to be like. I wouldn't click any of these here. The name prefix, so all of these here, maybe you don't need to put the name of the artist in it, because what's going to happen is every single track is going to have this on the beginning. So I'll do that, and we'll just keep them in the bounced files here. Let's maybe add a folder into this. So I'm going to hit choose. I'm going to add a folder in here called stems or sturms, as the case may be, and we'll give it the name Rubido. Like that. So I have a folder inside of here in my bounced files folder. It's going to put it in there. Cool. All right. Hit bounce. Oh wait, I don't want the MP3. There we go. Hit cancel for that MP3. Now I'm going to hit bounce, and it should. I forget if this is going to do. Hold on, it's been a while since I've done this. So let's go ahead and look at our folder over here. It stems. Yeah, it bounced them out as individual stems. And I didn't need to put the hyphen in here. It automatically puts an underscore here, which is fine. So I've got a hyphen in here, which is annoying. Here, let's do that again. I'm just going to delete all these without the hyphen. So let's do that again. Right click, bounce, take out the hyphen. There we go. Hit go. Okay. So now what we're doing is we're making individual stems. So whenever you're ready to take your song into another session and into another DAW, this is what you do. You just highlight your tracks and you hit right click and you bounce, and now all of our stems and stuff are in here and they're all the drum tracks. So if I wanted to, let's go ahead and put like 5 stereo tracks in here. They're all right here. I'm just going to drag them up to the top, and I'm going to put the tracks on here. I'm going to put it into shuffle mode, and let's drag 5 of these in here. Put them in the beginning, so you can see there they are. They're all right there, and it would sound like the 5 tracks in here. I'm not going to play it because they're in the wrong order and they're different tracks from what I've got here, but. Well, the stems have timestamps and show up in the correct timing of the song. Well, so here's how it works. When you stem things out, if we look in here, so the answer is they're not going to show up as individual clips based on the timing of your track, because what you're doing, so the real answer is yes, they do have timestamps, but they only have timestamps for Pro Tools. So if you drag it into Logic or you drag it into Ableton Live or something like that, they're not going to timestamp. So don't worry about the timestamps so much, because what happens is every track, when you bounce it out as a stem, it's going to be the whole audio file of the track just from start to finish. So we can see on here, see all these songs, like look, for example, at my, let's grab the clap and bring it in here. I'm going to show you the clap here. Let me delete these. Let's use the clap. So we can see our claps 1 and 2. They've got individual clips here where I've cut them, right? But up here, they're not individual clips. It's just one long audio clip for each one. So if I wanted to really be diligent about this, what I do, I would go back and I would cut this out. I would edit this for both of these and cut out the beginning part for these. Whoops, not in shuffle mode though. And I would go ahead and get rid of this audio in here so we're not having the silences in here. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. But you can see if I put these right next to each other, let me just move my clap up here. See that? It's in the same exact spot. The audio is in the same exact spot, but there's all this silence in here. So that's a really important thing to remember. When you're creating stems, it's creating one big long audio file of the whole track. So all you do is drag and drop everything into the very beginning of the start point of your song, and all your tracks will be in the right timing with each other. So even if you have like tempo changes and stuff like that, it's literally just bouncing down the audio, and it's not bouncing down any of your tempo changes and stuff, but they're going to be in the audio because it's the audio. So if the song slows down or speeds up, that slow down and speed up is going to be in the audio. So all the timing will stay the same. The only problem is if you have like MIDI data, you want to put MIDI data with your stems, then you'd have to make sure you're in the same timing, so that you have to make sure that BPM is the same as your original. So it's always a good idea, even when you're working with stems, to make sure you have the right BPM of your song so you can do like MIDI data and stuff like that. But you don't have to. You could just leave it. It's all going to line up anyway. So I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, we can discuss it more over in Zoom, which we're going to head to here in just a minute. Okay. So the bounce here is just bounces the tracks to disk for sending to other DAWs. That's your stems. It's the same thing as your bounce overall, except the bounce overall doesn't really do the stems, although I think, yeah, it doesn't do the stems. So that's the way you do the stems. On different DAWs like Pro Tools, in like Ableton Live and in Logic, you actually can use this to bounce out all your individual stems as well, the regular bounce feature. It has a section there for all tracks, all individual tracks. So, and we'll be talking about that later on. So this here is just how you do it in Pro Tools. So one more time, you just highlight all the tracks you want to bounce out as individual stems. I could do every single track in my whole session like that. And we can see they're all highlighted here on the left. And I just right click, I go to bounce. It's going to bounce out all of them. I put them in the right place, make sure everything's good, and I hit bounce. And then I would end up with every single track here in my stems file. I didn't want to do it right now because it just end up with too much audio file. But there we go. And you can see they're all about the same, 71, 70.9. I'm not really sure why these ones are different. They're like a little bit different, but maybe just because it only went to the end of the audio session there. And I'm pretty sure if you wanted to bounce out a certain part of the song, for example, if I'm going to go from top to end, if I use bounce for that, it'll bounce out just that section there from the one part to the next part there. There's nothing really to show that. Let's see, let's just do a couple things here. Let's just see what happens. Right click, bounce, hit go. Now if I put these in right where it says top, let's go down, I'm going to drag in a couple of audio tracks. There we go, stereo, and put these in here, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, it looks like it actually just bounced out the whole thing. It didn't do, yeah, it actually looks like it did do. Yeah, it did. It did depart. Yep, so that's, yeah. So you just highlight just the same thing I showed you all before. Use your markers, and it will bounce out just the part between your markers. You can see it's cut right there. So they're all exactly the same length here. So that's cool. So if you don't highlight anything, it's just going to bounce it out to the end of the clip, the last clip on there, so it's stopped right there. But if you do highlight, it'll bounce out the part you highlighted, which makes sense. All right. So yeah. And that's everything there. Yep. Cool, so let's do this. Let's take a 10-minute break and move over to Zoom. Let's be in Zoom at 11:30. And 9-minute break, be in Zoom at 11:30, and we can answer any questions about this, and we can talk about your projects and how they're going and stuff like that, because I want to make sure that everybody's doing okay with the projects. Also, there's a couple of questions I wanted to answer about some stuff with things that I've already heard. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.